When I was in first grade, we had a guest speaker who was a wildlife expert. He brought in birds and snakes for us to interact with. He was such a dynamic speaker that to this day, I can tell you the sound that the kookaburra makes, that's a bird from Australia, if I were to hear it. And not only that, I can also tell you how to help someone who just had a snake bite because of what he taught us on that day. Today, we are going to talk about how to make you such a dynamic speaker for your next presentation. If there is one thing that I would recommend you do if you want to become a dynamic speaker, speak in front of an audience of children. Children are the toughest audience because they get bored easily, they fidget, they get confused very easily, and their attention span is very low. So if you are speaking in front of children and you find them responding negatively to your presentation, it means you have some work to do in helping you to become a better speaker. So if you have an opportunity the next time you have a presentation, I would say to you, find your nieces and nephews or your children and have them be your audience as you give your presentation. You're going to have to make sure that your presentation is dynamic enough for them to stay attentive to what you are saying. If you are able to successfully give your presentation in front of them, the likelihood is it's going to be just as good in front of your peers. Obviously, if it's one of those very technical presentations, you would have to water it down in some way and bring it down to their level. But in general, if they get the gist of what you're saying, that means you're going to be very successful in giving it to other people. If you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe and ring the bell below so that you get all of the videos that I will be bringing out to help you to become a confident and articulate speaker. For any dynamic speaker, the number one goal is to give your audience an experience. Do not focus so much on just giving and delivering your speech and making it impressive. It's fine for your audience to be impressed by what you're saying, but it's better if they can remember and feel and connect with everything you said and how you said it to them. If you want your presentation to be as successful as possible, incorporate things that are unexpected in that experience. That means add sounds and surprises, add different textures and noises that are unexpected. Include all of the 5 senses that we all use in our everyday life, because those are the things that are going to help your audience to connect and remember your speech and everything you are teaching them in a very tangible and unforgettable way. As soon as I know that I have to give a presentation, the first thing I do is that I put myself in the mindset of thinking, if I were giving this presentation in front of a group of children, how would I do it? The first thing that I know that kids would have an issue with whenever I'm giving a presentation is to understand that they have a low attention span. So with that in mind, I have to make sure that right at the beginning, I grab their attention and hook them in so that they get excited about what I'm about to share with them. Usually something that has some life to it and some exuberance is going to awaken your audience and bring them to attention, and it will help them to realize that they're about to be taken on a journey or an experience that is going to be fun and interesting for them. One thing you can do as you start your presentation and you really want to hook in your audience is to have an unusual prop on stage or next to you as you're about to give your presentation. Think about adding something like a gigantic life-size box right next to you and have them guess what's inside that box. For the rest of the time that you're going to be speaking, your audience members will be paying attention to you because they'll be trying to figure out what is in that box based on what you're sharing with them. What an interesting and fun way to start your presentation. So use mystery as a way of engaging your audience right from the get-go. The second emotion that your toughest audience is going to suffer from is the sense of being bored. So the best thing you want to do is to ensure that every time you are talking, you are walking around, because that in itself means that people are paying attention to you and are drawn to you because they're not just facing you on stage. If you can actually get down and walk around in and amongst your audience members, it's really powerful in keeping them awake and keeping them engaged in what you're saying. In addition, add animation to the descriptions of what you are saying. If you are describing something that is absolutely frightening, then use a frightened voice, because when you do, again, people find that interesting and much more dynamic as they listen to you. The third thing you want to address when you are dealing with a tough audience, i.e. children, which also means that when you use it with adults, it's going to be really effective, is to address any possibility of them becoming fidgety. So how do you do that? The best way you can ensure that people become less fidgety is to have them interact in what you're doing. So that means make sure that even as you are talking, you ask them to talk back to you. In the example that I gave earlier of the wildlife expert, he made us practice the sound that the kookaburra makes, and that's how I remember it. He made us rehearse it a few times, and of course, as we were doing that, we were laughing and we were having so much fun. So the more you can incorporate laughter and fun and interactivity into your talk, the more dynamic it's going to be and the more memorable it's going to be for your audience. In addition, allow them to role play amongst each other. Let's just say you were giving a sales training to a group of people and you were giving some technical information that was really brilliant, but you also know that perhaps it's better for them to practice it together. So pair them up and have them have 5 minutes where they get to practice and role play what that scenario is actually going to look like when they're speaking to their clients. The more you are able to include and encourage that kind of interactivity into your talk, the more lively and interesting and fun it's going to be for them. And not only that, it will mean that the information you're giving them really sticks, because you are laying it in such a way where people cannot forget it. It's tangible for them now. The fourth thing you want to address in your endeavor to giving the most dynamic presentation possible is to make sure that your audience never gets confused. The way you make sure that your audience never gets confused is to always have one primary point that you want them to remember out of your presentation. So that means as you prepare your speech, make sure that your train of thought is really organized. Think about the story of Hansel and Gretel. In that story, the two kids follow a trail of breadcrumbs, and that means in your presentation, you want to do the same thing. Make sure that you are leading your audience on a very clear trail of thought that makes it easy for them to understand where you're going, and finally, what they should take home with them when they leave your presentation. The more your audience can follow your train of thought and really connect with each point that you're giving them, along with that one central point of what it is that they should take home, the more they're going to remember and connect with your presentation. Remember, the whole point of your presentation is to give your audience a really wonderful and interactive experience. So if you are able to do that in interesting and creative ways, the more dynamic your speech is going to be. Think about doing unusual things like having stations in the room that you're going to be giving your presentation and literally leading your audience from one station to the other. Of course, that only works if your audience is small enough for you to have that level of interactivity. But even if it doesn't, think of other ways that you can engage your audience and ignite a sense of wonder as they listen to your presentation. One good example that I would like to share with you today is what Volvo does every time a customer buys one of their cars. Let's just say you are an American customer and you buy a Volvo. You order your car. Instead of you, the customer, receiving the car in the United States, what you can do instead is something that they offer that is really special, and it's called the European delivery system. So the way it works is that you are given 2 complimentary return tickets to Sweden to actually go and collect your car. But you don't just go and collect your car. They actually give you certain itineraries for you to take, whichever one you choose, and you get to drive with your brand new car around Europe. So not only are you getting your car, you also get to have a European experience along with receiving your car. So what do you do with your car after you've driven it around and you've had wonderful excursions in Europe? Well, you take it back to Volvo, and they then take your car and send it back to the United States for you to receive when you get home. Can you imagine the level of loyalty this kind of an experience is going to have for any client who has bought a car from Volvo? Not only has it bought that kind of loyalty and support for their brand, it probably also means that those people become Pied Pipers in encouraging other people to buy Volvos so that they can have this kind of an experience when they buy their car. So it's a win-win for the brand as well as for the customer. So if you can do the same thing with your presentation, where you make it so lively, so exuberant, and so interesting for the listener that they cannot help but share it with other people, that means you have become a brilliant and dynamic speaker. Thanks so much for joining me in this video. I hope you found these tips really helpful in helping you and preparing you to become a dynamic speaker. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so. Please comment and like also below so that I hear what you got out of this video. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. But for now, here's to your success.